Hey, welcome to Dip and Chill, baby. A casual conversation with professional artists. I'm your host, Sid Williams. We're headed to the third floor to see Lauren Bergman in Studio 314.
And we going up.
The Florence Academy is to the left. There's a Fred Sandback sculpture exhibition to the right. And here we have it. We've arrived at Lauren Bergman Studio 314. Thank you, Lauren. I'm excited to be here with you.
I'm happy to be here.
Tell us a little bit about your practice.
Basically, I've been an exhibiting painter for more than 20 years, since the mid-90s.
Congratulations. That's the dream. Did you go to school?
I did. Well, I started taking art classes growing up at the Corcoran School of Art in Washington, D.C. I was in a specialized high school program where we spent half the day doing art and academics half the day. I did a lot of art in college, but I had my son when I was 20, so I realized I was going to have to make a living. And so I got an undergraduate degree, double major in art and education. And
where did you go to school?
I went to UMass Amherst and then to Smith.
Okay. Oh, cool. And are you from DC?
I'm from DC.
Okay. And when did you get to New York?
I got to New York in the late 80s, 89.
As a full exhibiting painter?
No, I was teaching a program that was art and literature at the Little Red Schoolhouse, which allowed me summers to paint, which was great. And then little by little built up painting practice. And I had a lucky break at a gallery in Washington, D.C. in, I think it was 94, 95. The gallery was called Capricorn Gallery, and the owner was Philip Descent, who was a real force in American realism.
Oh, cool.
And
that's perfect.
He picked, I was very young, very naive, and he took me on, and he was showing people like Sondra, Freckelton, Burton, Silverman, major American realists. So that was my first lucky break.
Did you start showing in New York from that gallery?
From Capricorn, I started showing at OK Harris in Soho, which was my next big break.
Yeah.
And we talked on an earlier discussion about mentoring, and I never had a formal artist mentor, but I feel like the galleries I got into were very instrumental in helping me with a career.
That's amazing. Not just using you and pushing you through.
Well, very different. Ivan Karp, who was the owner of OK Harris, was he was the first to show Warhol, Rauschenberg. He was major figure. And he was the only gallerist who would look at your work. You could walk in off the street and he was open to a conversation.
Cool. And how did you end up at MANA?
I had been applying for spaces. I think it was through New York Foundation for the Arts, and someone contacted me about a space at MANA in the basement. And so I came out to look, and I was like, wow, this is incredible.
Well, how long ago was that?
That was 2 years ago now.
Okay.
Little over 2 years ago.
What made this place incredible to you?
The physical space is amazing. The spaciousness, the size of the studios, though my first studio was very small. The community, it's like a hive of energy, a lot going on, a lot to see.
I think this place inspired me to start this podcast on figuring out what the conversation is when there's such a big physical space.
Right.
And there's so many artists in it. I wanted to hear what each world had to spill out. If you could open the door and read the hallway almost, you know, just like what was the stream of contemporary art in a building that is so much bigger than other artists' space, because it can be, because it's in Jersey City and there is space. Do you think there is a conversation that is happening in the contemporary world that is the mainstream out of the industry of art?
I'm definitely not in any mainstream conversation. I think in my career, I have been in a stream, and then I guess it was I showed in some very, well-regarded galleries, and then basically reached a point where I was dropped by one gallery and my other gallery went out of business. And I guess it was 2014, I was gallery-less, which really allowed me to reevaluate where I was at and what I wanted to do, and just follow my voice.
Yeah, sometimes that's a gift.
So now I'm not working with galleries, and the whole gallery world has changed radically in the span of my career, which I hope I'm not too far. I hope it goes a long way from here, but I'm definitely operating outside of the gallery
Do you
world.
feel like you have more control over your voice being independent?
Yes, absolutely. And I've also, my personal project has taken on a much larger life than I had ever imagined or hoped. I'm now working with a foundation that, also, that's another great thing about being at MANA is someone came to my studio and hooked me up with this foundation that is now sponsoring my project, and I'm working with a composer, a videographer, and poets in creating a much broader voice.
And you can go ahead, you can go into what this voice is, because I think it's quite relevant, whether there's a mainstream conversation or not. I think we all feel the political climate and the polarization of nationalism, if I want to use that word, and how relevant your work is to socially charged rebellion, almost. It's not rebellion.
Yeah,
your work
I see my work as the current cultural climate, something I can do. I was really shocked when the Charlottesville incident happened, and there were white nationalists marching through the streets, and the president said, well, there are fine people on both sides. It fundamentally changed my emotional landscape. That it, of course we've all heard about lynchings, we've heard about the Holocaust, but it was long ago and far away.
Yeah.
And here it was
present
in our current society and not being condemned. So I took on the idea of, I started thinking about when you allow hate to run rampant in a society, the ultimate conclusion is death of whoever is being victimized, whoever is other. And I thought about all the people who had been eliminated. And my work has always been about the female narrative and exploring, the the female perspective within the context of American culture. And I thought about all the lives that didn't get to unfold and the stories that didn't get to be told. So I wanted to set out to basically tell the story of hate through giving life to these images that didn't get to have their life, didn't get to tell a story. So I use historical photos that we look at these photos and experience horror, but I think by imagining them, imagining their inner world, or imagining a more idyllic setting, that it forces the viewer to realize that this was a whole person. This was a life. This was someone who had dreams,
wasn't a historical
and hopes and aspirations that, because of who they were hated and killed.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, I think you're it's very successful. Your work is full of life, and it is full of, you don't feel sadness, you feel wonder, which I think is exactly the whole point, is like you're wondering what their life could be or should have been. So I think it's admirable, to say the least.
Thank you. And it is my way of protesting hate, of confronting the viewer to realize that this can happen again.
Yes, and is happening.
Is
happening. And I think allowing your voice to shine through natural connections of mutually beneficial relationships could be where the conversation is leading to. It's not being confined to a movement or to a gallery or to a vocabulary.
Right.
But it's allowing you what your heart needs and wants, and to be fully realized through mutually beneficial parties, which I think is a wonderful platform to navigate through. In your time as a exhibiting painter, I mean, the world has changed so much with just galleries, but how has social media and the internet changed the conversation through your long career, or a career that has at least seen the evolution of Instagram and social media through no Instagram, no social media, no real cell phones, to artists that are fully exhibiting through the platform of Instagram?
I have, not a huge following, but enough people that I feel like I'm able to reach out and show quite a variety of people what I'm working on, and I get responses from all over about how the work moves them. They're touched by it. They follow along on my journey, and that's wonderful. And I know there are Instagram artists who are very savvy and have figured out how to use the platform to really blow up and to have huge, profitable careers strictly through social media.
Are they generally younger artists?
I'm not sure. Probably, but there's some huge superstars that are not that young. I think in their early mid-40s.
Yeah, I think. I mean, of course there is.
But they've learned how to
play the game.
Yeah, and it's, on the one hand, is it not valid because it's become a business, that it's hugely successful, or is it empowering that the artist is determining their own career and not at the mercy of galleries and
dealers and collectors? Yeah, really giving a full advantage to their voice and how they want to use it, whether it's and industry driven or not.
And I was thinking the other day about how I remember when QVC first came on television, and I was like, who wants to watch a show of shopping and of, other people? And people would call in and talk about the product. And then I thought about it, and it's really people want to connect. And if you're sitting on your couch in the middle of, I don't know, the country, wide open space, and there's someone, you're creating a community that didn't exist. You're creating a connection with a person. And I think some artists have the ability to create that kind of community, that virtual world where they're connecting with people that want to be a part of what they're doing.
Do you think they're more talking to themselves?
They definitely have self-promotion down to a very skilled.
I wonder if the shared dialogue has been fragmented because it's so easy to talk to yourself and to be reflected back at the projection of what you want to see and hear over and over again, that it's kind of this cyclical cycle of just consumption.
Right.
Which is muddying consumerism, whether that's consuming art or consuming visual imagery, or I don't know, it's a fine line. It's a fine line between.
Well, they did a study I was reading about, which is very scary, that of education, and I think it was a global study, and American students, high school students, scored extremely low in this one area of determining fact from fiction. And or fact from opinion. And so imagine not being able to determine if something is a stated fact. This exists and this happened, from, a complete
And it's just
fabrication. Americans scored significantly lower, like
That's
a
interesting.
lot lower than.
It's scary.
And you think of the social ramifications of that, of a whole population that can't determine.
Makes you think of preoccupied Germany.
Right.
Which
and it spills over into something like, if you don't have a way of analyzing things, you can be told anything is good.
Yeah, and not have it, just not be able to distinguish anything.
Right.
Which is scary.
Well, if so-and-so says this is great art, it must be great art.
Yeah, exactly. Not being able to have enough information
Right.
built on some form of
And not having the
truth.
skills to process.
Yeah, definitely. And I think with the lack of cohesive shared vocabulary of the contemporary art world now, coming from a place of knowing and truths, is it important to bridge your influences from the past into the future?
That's a good question. I came up kind of through, I don't want to say pop art, but definitely I was lumped in for many years with the pop surrealists, which was primarily Los Angeles based. And I showed.
Were you living in LA?
No, I was here, but I was
Okay.
showing. I was showing at OK Harris, that also was at the forefront of pop art early
Okay.
on, and I was a couple decades after pop art, but kind of using pop cultural icons in my work as a way of describing culture, particularly female identity within cultural constructs. So the whole pop surrealism, new contemporary art movement is kind of what I would have been categorized into.
Were you paying tribute to just the cultural icons or the people that originally sourced cultural icons as a way of identifying culture?
Yeah, I guess it definitely influenced by Rauschenberg, Lichtenstein.
Yeah. With so much information, how do you choose what to reference when all the information is immediate and oversaturated?
I get overwhelmed really easily. and left to no self-discipline, I could spend all my time looking at other people's work going, oh, what could how do I fit in? But that leads me down a rabbit hole that has no exit. So basically, I have to shut it out and come into the studio and hear my own voice. At this point, I am kind of set in my ways in terms of how I draw, how I paint, how I represent. I have a developed language of skills. I mean, I'm always trying to improve and get better and better, but I'm kind of, this is what I do, this is how I, so I have my process and my thought, my own allegories, my own resources of internal inspiration.
Where do you see the art world going? I know that's a big question, and you might not have an opinion on it, but...
I definitely think that there are more financially surviving artists now than ever before. And I think it's due in large part to kind of decentralization of the art. Like, there are a lot of regional markets, people who are successful in their community, and now with social media they can reach create their own community. I'll go wherever, some small town somewhere or something, and there are galleries with local artists who are finding ways of making it. And I think aspirations are different. A lot of people just want to do their work, and they're not looking to the big art world. They're not looking for the global success.
They're looking just for the success of sustaining.
Yeah, of being able to do it.
Yeah, I mean, that has a ton of merit to be able to craft your life.
Right.
What do you think art is? Or what is art?
For me personally, it's not a choice. It's what I do because I have to do it. I just don't.
So art is a sensation?
No, for me, it's the need to tell my thoughts, my stories, a lot of times I feel like I'm the Edvard Munch painting, running around with my hair on fire, screaming, and it's my way of dealing with whatever's causing
being in
me
a collective world.
Right. And hopefully with what I need to tell, I can touch people who want to hear it or appreciate seeing it.
Where do you think artists will go when they can't afford to go anywhere else? Because New York has been the epicenter of the art world, but New York is fairly saturated. That kind of brings us to Mana, is why a lot of artists are coming to Jersey City.
Right. And I think it's the endless story of artists finding the affordable places and making their world there, and then everyone sees, oh, that they're so cool, I wanna, and the capital follows the artists, and then the artists have to find the new
capital. And this is why, I mean, why should people care about art? And I think it is this constant, it's what came first, the chicken or the egg?
Right. I think people do crave art.
Yeah.
They, whether they
know it,
have a good sense of what they're looking for, or there's affordable, accessible art all over the place.
Yeah, I'm just not concerned is not the right word. I guess I've been thinking about how many artists there are and how the depth of the artist doesn't have to be as deep anymore, if that makes sense. We don't have to fight for a lifestyle that's already been established. We can kind of inherit this bohemian lifestyle without scraping all of our edges, because it's a little more socially acceptable to be a flair of bohemian, or not bohemian in the sense of the artist that founded the Village in New York City, of really breaking a mold,
Right.
of starving artist into
And also
sustainable
there
artist.
aren't the same frontiers.
No.
New York City, I don't know where there are frontiers to inhabit outside of the city, so people find, and then I think given the need, people find the way.
Definitely.
There was a time when there really were art centers, and that exists. New York is an art center. I don't know how true that is now. Most artists can't afford to live in New York unless, you've been there a while.
So you're Trustafarian.
Right. Or London or whatever, but
Absolutely.
but there are a lot of artists.
There's a lot of artists.
They're just not all in one spot.
Do you think there's a merit to an in-person dialogue between artists?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
We are also in a very live artist space, so we're going to hear a lot of
Yes.
sounds. We are on studios.
Yeah. Like that.
Like this, yeah. All right, Lauren, do you have anything else to add?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
It's been real. I'm
Yeah.
Sid Williams. This is Tip and Tell, and I'm here with Ian Eckstein on sound. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
This was great.